Well, hello, thank you for popping by and spending some time with me. Today I'm going to be taking care of my plants. I've already done the ones in the hallway. They're nicely settled. I actually started the day so good today. I got up, exercised, so hence the fact that I'm in this super tight gear. So today I'm going to talk you through the various different ways I take care of my plants. Now I've got some that are in drainage pots with drainage holes. Some of those plants are in a soilless mix. Well, actually all my plants are in soilless mix, although I just call it a soil mix, just for reference. Some are in, although they're in drainage pots, they're in pon, and some are in leca. So I'll talk you through those three differences. Then I also have some plants that are in no drainage pots. Some have soil and some have pon and some have leca. And then I also have, I think, 4 plants at the moment on moss poles. So I water those guys differently. Before that, I'm actually going to make myself a quick smoothie. I'm going to go take a shower. And yeah, I'll see you in a moment. Frozen bananas. Some cacao powder and some peanut butter. And that's it really. That is delicious. I'm going to pop off and have a shower quickly. For you it's going to be like 5 seconds, and I'll see you back here with some of my plants that are in drainage pots. That's better. So I am dressed, I am ready, and I've surrounded myself with lots of my plants. So I thought I'd best start with the plants that I have that are in my soil mix, and I brought over a kind of selection of some that are in drainage pots and some of them are in no drainage pots, and then some need to be watered more often than others. So I brought over some thirsty guys first. So starting with my Pilea Moon Valley, I think it's the Pilea mollis, and I've had this for quite a few months now. I would say about 6 months. I would say that I would like to try and get this into some lower lighting, because I do think that the green is a little bit bleak. As you can see, I've put it in a clear vessel because I like to put my plants in clear vessels like this, or clear pots, so that I can have a good old look at the roots and see whether it needs watering or not. But generally, from what I would do is go by the weight of the plant. This one feels very, very light. So I would now go ahead and water the plant. So let me just grab my watering can. Okay, so I'm going to give it some water. Today it's getting fertilised water. Generally I will do 1 week on and 1 week off. And in the winter, because I'm using plant lights, I will continue pretty much with the same routine, but I'll probably be watering them less depending on whether I'm putting my heating up. Last winter I tried to keep my heating low, so I definitely was watering less frequently. This is what I'm using. It is just an all-purpose fertilizer, and it's very balanced. It's got all the stuff in it. It's got nitrogen sulfate N, nitrogen N, phosphorus P2O5, phosphorus P, potassium, potassium K, sulfur, magnesium, calcium. So it has all the things that's going to keep my plants nice and strong, and I do get on very well with this product. Okay, so with the soil plants, I mix sometimes, well, what's in here at the moment is actually half strength because we are still in spring. Maybe as summer comes along and I start seeing it pushing out more growth, I will up it to 2 mils per litre, but at the moment it's just 1 mil per litre. I'm actually not going to water on top of the plant. I'm going to put some water inside this pot. And if I were to put a measuring tape in there, it would probably measure to about 1 centimetre, like. And then I just plonk the plant in, and I know that that's exactly the amount of water that it needs, although I will come and check on this plant again at the end of the day and see if there's any water left in the bottom of the pot. But generally, you can see how floppy she is. Hopefully by the end of the day, she'll be standing back up and I can put a comparison of what she could actually be looking like. But it's great that I have at least one thirsty plant. Okay, so I'm doing this one definitely on a weekly basis, and it would probably prefer it if I were doing it every 5 days. But yeah, I've waited until it got really super floppy. But it's fine, it will bounce back. Very easy plant. This is my Ficus elastica, the variegated one. I put it in like a clear orchid pot, and you can see the roots are growing quite nicely. She's a beautiful plant. But let me just put it back in her pot so that when I do tip her, you can see how pretty those leaves are. This plant is growing on me daily. Love wise, I'm really loving this plant, and I'm looking forward to it getting much taller. I might try and branch this one out so it becomes a little bit bushier. That would be really nice if it had maybe 3 stems or something, but it's still very young for me to do that. I don't know if I would do that right now. But yes, I absolutely adore this plant. I'm probably watering this one every 10 days. It's pretty much every 10 days, because I know that if I were to say, okay, let's water every Sunday, it's not ready the following Sunday. So the days are always kind of a bit off. I'm going to go ahead and do exactly the same thing. With this one, I'm going to go a little bit deeper. I'm going to go maybe 2 centimetres. It's all kind of trial and error, and I think I've got to a stage now with my plants where I know exactly how high the water should go. Another thing actually that I didn't discuss, all of my pots, every single one of them has a very, I don't know if you can see that, but it has a layer of lacquer balls. So from here to here, that they're just lacquer balls at the bottom. So that, again, that's why I'm kind of going 2 centimetres. And so the soil's not exactly sat right in the water. The lacquer balls are definitely in the water, but the soil, if it needs to absorb the water, it will. And then again, I'll come back at the end of the day and just chuck out what it just didn't want. Okay, the same thing with the monsteras, the same kind of watering habit, probably every 10 days, definitely every 10 days, not any sooner than that. Again, I'll go by the weight. This one feels heavier. I know that I watered this one maybe 3 days ago, so I'm not going to water this one. And also I can see in the bottom of the pot, you can see condensation there. And this is a drought tolerant plant. So it really does prefer to be dry before its next watering. When I'm using fertilized water, I would submerge the plant. But the following week, when I'm using plain water, I actually water on the top and I let it flush through. So I'm kind of almost cleaning out any old unused fertilizer. I don't know if that's really a thing, but it makes me feel like I'm cleaning through the soil. I just like doing that, and it has worked very, very well for me. So those are those guys. Okay, should I go on to no drainage now? Actually, before I go on to no drainage, I have one more plant that I want to show you. There's the orchid up there. I never water on top, ever. I always put water in the bottom of the tray. I'll probably do some B-roll so that you can see that. That's probably the only other plant. Besides, now we're going to go into anthuriums. Now, anthuriums are very different. So yeah, this is one anthurium that I have in a drainage pot. As you can see, there's water down there. It's got sphagnum moss on the top, and I do like that sphagnum moss to be moist. So I do water on the top of this guy. So if you water on top of your plant's soil, then you might find yourself getting things like muddy gnats. And if you do have anything like thrips around, then they can enter the topsoil very easily. Because I'm watering on top with this plant, it's got a layer of sphagnum moss. So generally that sphagnum moss will be changed every 3 months, and I'll clean the sphagnum moss and reuse it. I'll clean it with hydrogen peroxide. So although there is an area where pests can fester, it's being changed every 3 months. Now I want to let me just show you a little closer. Sorry, I didn't give you the name of this plant. It's my crystallinum pink edge, and that was its latest leaf. And the one before that was this one. And the thing with the anthuriums is that if you're sizing up the pot, then the leaves will get larger each time. I haven't actually sized up this pot in some time, and it still gave me a much larger leaf. So that is something that I learned from another plant parent, YouTuber. I'm not so sure I actually believe that anymore. I don't know if you really do need to constantly be repotting your plants. And if it's in drainage, then I think I'm just going to continue leaving it in this pot, and I'll see whether the leaf after this one will be larger than this one. If it starts getting smaller, then maybe I will upsize the pot, but for now it's going to stay in this one. I'm actually glad that we've entered the drainage pots, the plants in soil in drainage pots, because I'm going to show you a plant that I have also in soil, another anthurium, but this one is in a no drainage pot. And let me just show you, this is my crystallinum super silver. That's its latest leaf. It's still a little bit bent at the moment because it hasn't completely hardened off. The one before that was this one, and you can see she's got quite a pot of leaves. We've got 5 leaves in here. So it is in a clear vessel, it is glass, and I've got a layer of leca balls. So that's kind of holding the soil above the bottom of this pot, and it's acting like what do they call those pots? Sorry, my brain just went dead. Yeah, so it's kind of acting like a self-watering pot, because in a self-watering pot you would have one pot that's much higher and one inside another pot that would have the water, and then it would draw up. So it's exactly the same method. The only difference is obviously that this one doesn't get a chance to be flushed through. So, you know, I can't do a heavy flush through and clean out the soil from any build-up. But because it is an anthurium, I'm going to put it down now. Ooh, just got whipped. But because it is an anthurium, and I know I'm going to be repotting this plant and upscaling its pot every 3 months pretty much. Sometimes more often than that, especially when it's growing season and it's popping out more leaves more often. So it gets a chance to either have brand new soil, or I will flush through the soil and reuse it. The soil, there is a very small difference in the soil that I'm using for the anthuriums. They have my aroid mix, but also they get some tree fern fibre. The drought tolerant plants like this and the ficus, I brought over another plant here. These guys, the drought tolerant ones, are all in a chunky aroid mix. And then with the plants that tend to need a little more watering, I have just used, I mean, this one does look like it's in a chunky aroid mix, to be honest, but it's kind of more cocoa husk. Sorry, not cocoa husk. It's more cocoa core based, the soil. So, yeah. So slightly more absorbent. Okay, so that's that dude. And then I brought over one more plant. Oh, actually, I didn't tell you about this one. This is my pretty turtle. I absolutely love this plant. It's one of my favourite plants. Oh my God, and she is just exploding. I accidentally ripped off a brand new leaf yesterday. I was so upset. But then I looked at it and I was like, where was it? She's just got so many leaves, barely noticed that it's gone. But yeah, this one I bottom water as well. I never water on the top. And I just lift it up and see whether it's, actually no, they get kind of a little floppy. Look how like hardcore they are now. But yeah, they kind of get a little bit floppy, and then I bottom water it, and I'll do that overnight because it takes quite a long time for this one to draw the water, the amount of water that it wants. And it's in a very similar soil mix as the Pilea. So yeah, and I'm doing this one maybe every 10 days. Okay, sorry about the back and forth, but now we're back into plants that are in no drainage pots. So this one is my Crimson Queen. She's just bloomed and she is in a chunky aroid mix. I recently repotted this one because it needed a larger pot, and this is the only pot I could find. So it's in a no drainage pot. It's actually a Tupperware that I got from the pound shop, but I've made little holes, and I hope that you can see those. But yeah, there's holes that I made using a soldering iron all the way around, just above where I've put the leca balls, which are acting as a reservoir for the water. Does this one need watering? I am seeing a little moisture in the bottom. Excuse my buzzing fridge. But yeah, that's her, and I'll probably wait maybe another day before watering this one because she's got a lot of soil going on in here. And I'm watering this one definitely every 10 days to 2 weeks, which is fabulous. And this one lives in the hallway, which gets high light, but not quite as long as the plants in this room. So I think that's probably why I'm not having to water this Hoya quite so frequently. Okay, so I'm going to move on to plants that I care for that are in, I think I'll do the pon ones next. Pon and lacquer. I'm going to go and grab the next batch of plants. So let's start with plants in drainage. Here is my Hoya linearis, which is in a drainage pot. Again, you can see the lacquer balls there at the bottom, and generally this is how I will water the plant. Now, there's absolutely no water in there, so I'm going to give this one a bit of water actually. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to give this guy a little bit of a water. So these are all semi-hydroponic plants. They're all in pon or they're in lacquer. The percentage that I will use of my fertiliser, this stuff, is 0.5 mils in every 1 litre. And I do like to do a little bit on the top, coming a little bit closer. I like to do a little bit on the top, like so. And then the rest will just go in the bottom, like that, so that it has enough to cover just the lacquer balls. This one currently lives in the living room on my shelf. It gets some nice kind of, what's a good way of saying it? Like intermittent highlight. So it's not in constant highlight, but it does get times of the day where the light is directly on it. And I think it likes it. I have another one I have 2 more in the hallway. One that's kind of it's just away from the skylight. I'll put some B-roll in. And the light doesn't ever really hit it, but it just kind of gets a shimmering of light. It really likes that area. It grows very well there and it stays there throughout the winter as well. It gets very cold there. This one's always in the living room and it's quite warm generally in the living room. Okay, I'm going to put you there. Right, let's move on to another one. Let's go on to this guy. So this one, another Hoya, I know, but it's in no drainage. As you can see, it's got its lacquer balls. And with this one, I can't really go by its weight so much. I really do have to look at the pot and see if there's any condensation. I'll generally do that with most of the plants. This one I can see is quite dry. I need to mix up some more fertiliser, but I'm going to go in and I just want to make sure that I'm getting like everywhere. I don't want it to be moist just on one side. I want it to be, I need to fill this up. So yeah, I just want to make sure. That's why these little squirty bottles are so useful, because you can literally make sure that every part has been touched by moisture. And we actually have some water in the reservoir, so that's good. Yeah, the blooms are absolutely gorgeous. I was showing them off recently and I can see that this one, this peduncle right here, I don't know if you can see, hopefully. Yeah, that one's getting ready. So very happy about that. Very similar kind of flower. Well, let's see if I can smell anything today because it's a little cooler. I can. Now this one's like got more of a candy-like smell. Okay, slightly off topic. Let's move on. So I've got 2 plants here that are in lacquer. They're both in no drainage. But I brought over the two because I do care for them slightly differently. And I forgot to say, with my other monsteras, I do add something to the water. With my monstera albos, I do add silicone to the water, and I also I neutralize the water. I think I do have a video on how I changed the water pH and how I neutralize the water from sulfates, chloride, you know, all the chlorine stuff. But yeah, these guys get kind of a slightly elevated watering situation. Because this one's in pond, I treat it exactly the same way. It is a hydroponic plant, semi-hydroponic, sorry. It's a semi-hydroponic plant, so I treat it in exactly the same way as I do all of my other semi-hydroponics. So the fertilizer will be that same strength, 0.5 to every litre. The reason why I'm adding silica to the water with the elbows is to keep this white variegation from going brown, which is often something that people struggle with. So yeah, that's that dude. Now, I only recently cut this plant. I did this off camera. I just wanted a day on my own, just me and the plants. So I did chop the top. Well, the bottom's in my bedroom. There's nothing wrong with the bottom of the plant. I just wanted to get this on the shelf. I just wanted it to sit on the shelf. But yeah, so I mean, it literally only has this little aerial root, which I can see already has activated, because that was completely brown before, this aerial root. Actually, no, hang on. Is it that one? Yeah. Oh, it's grown longer. Okay, because it was much higher up before. Okay, that's interesting. And it's only been a week. Oh, I'm so happy. And I've got another aerial root here, which I did cut. I might have done this on camera, actually. I may have done this in a video. I can't remember now. But anyway, although it doesn't actually have a root system other than the aerial roots, this was filled with water, with its, you know, especially fertilized water. It was filled to about here because I wanted it to reach the highest aerial root, which has grown down as the water's gone down. I mean, the water, you can see, there's barely any water in there. So I'm really pleased with that. That is a very healthy indication that this plant is still growing, because I was like, okay, whoop, let's just chop it off, stick it in a jar, put some leca balls in. When I'm using, sorry, I'm going on a bit. When I am going to use leca balls as my plant substrate, I will soak the leca balls in that fertilized water for a day, and then I'll use the leca balls. If I'm just using the leca balls as a reservoir for, you know, something like this, I don't soak the leca balls. Right, this is actually a top cut from my philodendron fuzzy petiole. Let me show you its fuzzies. Check how fuzzy that is. Gorgeous. Yeah, so the philodendron is on the moss. It was growing on a moss pole. I just chopped the moss pole and I just stuck it in this vessel, slapped in some leca balls, which have been soaked in a fertilized water overnight. And I can actually see, we're getting really close, hopefully that glare, or you can see between the glare, but yeah, There are some secondary roots growing into that leca, which is fabulous. I don't know if I'm going to keep this plant in this situation, but for now it's happy, and I don't see any reason to change it at the moment. Obviously it's going to keep growing upward. In fact, you can already see the next leaf coming right there. So eventually I will need to extend the pole, which basically means just clipping on one and filling it with sphagnum moss. So yeah, I don't water the lecables. I go straight in to the sphagnum moss, and that eventually seeps down into the reservoir. The pole is held this high above the lecables, so that's the height of the reservoir of water that I will leave in the bottom of this pot. And I treat it the same way as my semi-hydroponics. These plants don't really get flushed through, or they never get plain water. They always get fertilised water, the strength that I told you earlier. And the reason why that is because my soil mix has worm casting in it, which is a natural fertiliser. They're fine to have 1 week on and 1 week off, but these guys don't, so they have to have something. They need something in the water. I think I've covered all of my semi-hydroponic plants. I have most of my Hoyas in semi-hydroponic. Noisy bike, just let that go by. Yeah, like I was saying, yeah, I have most of my Hoyas in semi-hydroponic in pon, and I like to grow them in pon. They really seem to react very well in pon, but I do have 2 experiments on the go with 2 Hoyas that I've had for a very long time. Well, the one that I've had for a very long time, the other one is actually a cutting of this plant, and I'm kind of testing out whether those 2 plants would actually prefer soil. So there are some plants that absolutely hate being in pon, and I've lost some plants. I've lost some very beautiful plants that that just didn't react very well in pon, and yeah, some prefer the soil. So it's just kind of a matter of working out what works best for you, because I definitely feel it's more because of how I take care of my plants rather than the actual substrate. I don't know. Let me know what you think on that theory. Do you think it's that some plants actually just prefer pon than other plants, or it's just that the substrate matches my lifestyle and my personality, or your lifestyle, your personality? Okay, I was going to take you around and show you the plants on moss poles. Actually, you know what? I can drag one over. Let me put these guys away and I'll drag over my plants. So I've surrounded myself with plants. This is my Monstera albo. This is the top cut that I recently cut of a very, very tall Monstera albo. The bottom cut is here, so if you can see that. So it was standing at the height that I am, and this one is in a Tupperware pot that has some drainage holes that I use a soldering iron at the bottom. I feel like this is a really weird place to... Oh, hang on. Let's just push this back a little bit. it's a little bit better. Yeah, so hopefully you can see, like, this plant is in a Tupperware pot that I made some holes in the bottom, and it's in a chunky aroid mix on a moss pole filled with moss, and is growing very, very well. And I just want to show you, so I did cut it in half, and already you can see the new growth has been activated. So it's a very healthy, happy plant. I'm watering this one in the shower every 2 weeks. So not only is it getting its moss pole nice and moist, and of course the water goes into the bottom of the pot as well, but because it's got its drainage holes, it'll just drain out. Check out those roots. So that happens every 2 weeks. Okay, and that way they're also getting a nice wash. So I will kind of go in on the leaves and give them a good old spray down as well. They absolutely love that. They really, really do enjoy it. I can tell because they come out looking very bouncy. And it gives me another chance also to look for any pests. The kind of pests that I'm finding on just the top cut, always on the new leaf, are mealybug. So I pretty much do look every day at that top leaf and check that there's nothing there. Since I've cut it from the bottom of the plant, it hasn't actually produced any new leaves. It literally is just working on its root system, because obviously, because it was completely connected to that root system, and you saw the size of the pot at the bottom, it was just able to keep pushing out more and more new leaves. And even throughout the winter I was getting some leaves, and you can kind of tell which ones are winter leaves and which ones are summer leaves, with them being smaller, but as hopefully in the summer they'll start sizing up. And the variegation is on point, barely any browning. So yeah, I'll go into the shower, I'll give it a good old wash, I'll make sure that the pot pole is getting nice and moist. Just want you to have a look at these roots. They're just, oh, they're super chunky. Yeah, so I'll go in, make sure that everything's nice and moist. Again, this one is in a Tupperware pot that I've made some holes in the bottom, and it's actually, I don't know, I'll stand here. The ceilings it keeps hitting the ceiling, but yeah, it's in pure leckables, as you can see. So once I have watered or showered the plants, and I feel that the pole, because you know how sphagnum moss, when it gets really dry, it's hard, like the water will just kind of balance on top, and it will drip down the sides. Like, it's really hard to like get it to retain water at first. So I'll go in with the shower and just make sure that it is moist. I'll let that run through. I'll come back after about half an hour, because it does take a little while for it to drain out of the bottom of the pot. And then I'll come in with my watering can, which is behind me somewhere, with the mix that I use on all of my Monstera albos, and I'll water the pole, the moss pole, and it will eventually just drip into the leckables. So that's the Monstera. This one's probably the most time consuming, but I'm only doing it every 2 weeks. I would love to have a bigger shower where I could just chuck them all in at the same time, but it's a process, guys. Like, moss pole day is not my favorite day, and I'm kind of over moss poles. I think this is all of my plants on moss poles. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then kind of 5 because of the fuzzy petiole, the philodendron fuzzy petiole. Here's another one. Let's see, what are you in? This one's in a soil mix. Yeah, it is. This is my Epipremnum Marble Queen, and she is sizing up beautifully. We did have a little bit of spider mite earlier this week, and I had to pick off several leaves. About 2 or 3 leaves kind of went yellow, which was a clear indication to me that it was struggling with some sort of pest, because it was definitely not a light situation. Let me just show you its root system. Yeah, so the roots are looking pretty good. And again, it's in a Tupperware pot that I bought from the pound shop. I've created a reservoir with leca balls, and then the soil is above that. And then I put the holes exactly at the level where the leca balls are, and it just gets watered every 2 weeks. And to be honest, this one, I don't really fertilise it. I don't think I've ever fertilised this plant because I always put it in the shower. Yeah, I don't think it had. That's interesting, actually. I'm just thinking through this now. Yeah, see, that leaf looks like it's being attacked. Let me get rid of that. Look, you can see it's kind of yellowing. And I mean, it's getting really good light. That's my fridge again. I'm actually just going to ignore it. I switched off my fridge because I was doing a video, and then I forgot to switch it back on again. And the next day, and I just filled it with food, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to eat all this stuff now. So we're just gonna ignore the buzzing sound. But yeah, that's that dude. Pretty much the same as the Monstera, but easier. And the last plant that I have on a moss pole, and it's kind of in a combination of leca and soil. I recently repotted this one. I think I did it in my long lazy day of plant chores, one of those videos. It's still early days. I haven't really noticed if that is enough soil to retain enough water to like hold on to it. I do feel that this moss, this new moss that I've been using, is a bit fibery and a little bit, it doesn't retain water quite as quickly as the cheap stuff from B&Q. And I might take this off the moss pole and use soil instead. I think I want to start using soil. If I'm going to continue doing moss poles, I think I want to put soil instead. Anyway, those are the moss poles. Fairly easy. I don't think I would ever put a plant that's thirsty on a moss pole. In fact, I do have some plants that are in pure sphagnum moss, so I think I'll show you those next actually, and then we'll end it there. Okay, I'm back. I've brought over some plants that are currently in sphagnum moss, and actually this is the only way I've had success with them. So the first plant that I put in pure sphagnum moss was my begonia maculata, and I do still kind of forget to water it. Check out the back of these leaves. I really love a red back to a leaf, and I know that not everyone does, but I just love them. This one is in no drainage, and as you can see, same method. I've got my self-watering pot, using leca balls as the reservoir, like keeping the sphagnum moss above the water. And I'm definitely watering this one every 4 or 5 days. I'm definitely watering it a lot, but it's worth it because these leaves, I can actually only see one leaf that looks a bit crispy, which is that one. And that's because I did actually miss a watering. But It's been growing so nicely. Look how healthy these leaves are. And we've got new ones coming. This is the only begonia that I have because I've struggled with this plant for such a long time. I grew this from like a 2-leaf cutting, and I've tried all the things. We've tried, I think I mentioned this earlier, that there's some plants that do not like pond. Now, because it's such a thirsty plant, I just naturally assumed it's going to love pond. When I first got pond, oh my gosh, almost anything that was thirsty went into pond. So that's kind of how I know which ones love it and which ones don't. This one hated it. It absolutely hated it and just wanted to curl up and croak it. It was just like, take me, just take me now. I can't cope with this life. But yeah, now it's really, really happy. I actually have another little cutting, a much smaller one, and it's so cute. It's really pretty. It's getting bigger by the day. But yeah, pure sphagnum moss. I swear by it. And then I bought some Marantas. Now, I had this Maranta when I very first started buying plants. I had this Maranta, and I probably had maybe 4 or 5 other plants, and I actually grew this to quite the size in soil. It was massive, and then I thought, then I got into propagating. I chopped it all up, and it, yeah, that was the end of that plant. I probably shouldn't have done that. I think the reason why it grew so well was because I had fewer plants to care for, so therefore it was like almost my prime priority. I don't know if those two words go together. It sounded weird in my head. But anyway, yeah, it was my priority plant. Okay, this one actually does need to go into a larger pot. It's current, oh my God, it's literally growing out of the pot. I don't know if you can see that. But yeah, definitely needs to go into a larger pot. So yeah, I completely forgot about the whole sphagnum moss thing. Completely forgot about sphagnum moss and how well it was doing with this thirsty plant. And for some reason, I just overlooked my Marantas. And one of my subscribers, one of you guys, brought to my attention that they actually had theirs in sphagnum moss, and then I was just like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? That's so silly. But thank you so much if you are watching, because my Marantas are looking amazing. Now this one was looking quite pathetic. I grew this from a cutting, so we have come a long way, but every winter we would go back to very few leaves and just browning leaves. And I mean, the tips are still getting this browning here. I probably should use the same water that I use for my elbows with this plant, because obviously, like with the tap water, that this fertilizer that I use on the other plants has a lot of chlorine and all of those things, and apparently the Calathea, or actually it's not a Calathea family, it's the Marantissia family, do not like that. They don't like it. And now that I kind of feel like I've mastered, I don't know if I really have, to be honest, but yeah, I have the two thirsty Marantas that I'm keeping alive and are looking fairly happy. I recently upsized this one's pot, and I can already see roots popping out here and there. You can see them they're just trying to get to the leckables because there's a reservoir. So with these guys, I don't water on top. I just put some water in the bottom of the pot and I put them in. And that's probably why the roots really are just gravitating towards, hopefully you can see them. But yeah, they're definitely gravitating towards that reservoir. And yeah, I just love this plant. At night, it's all stood up. When I see them standing at night, I definitely know that they're happy and they're healthy. if I go by them at night and they're not doing that, then I'm like, oh, is there a pest? And I'll just start checking for pests. I'll get my flash torch out, and at night it's just easier to see them. And like the Marantas are very expressive in that way. This one most definitely is telling me I need a bigger pot and you need to hurry up and do it. So I'll probably do that today. But yeah, I think those are my sphagnum moss dudes. The other plants that I have in pure sphagnum moss are plants that I'm busy, that I propagated. So I do have one up there, but I'm not going to show you it. It's just a propagation. So I'll probably do a separate video on propagating plants, because I do have a couple. I'm always chopping up my plants, so I'll bring you along the next time I start chopping. Yeah, there's some other plants that I want to go over quickly with you. First of the plants that I have in terracotta, which are behind me, and you may have seen earlier that I put them in this bucket, or whatever it's called, this tub of water, and I'm just allowing the terracotta pots to soak up the water and the plants to soak up the water. And I can definitely see on this part that the moisture, like you can feel the moisture up here as well, and I can see the moisture on the top of this plant. So this one is done, and this is how I'm watering these particular plants at the moment. This is a kind of new experiment for me with the Sansevieria being in terracotta, but I do have some other plants that are also in terracotta, and those are all my succulents. So obviously they're kind of more drought tolerant plants and do not want to be overwatered. Like, they just don't like that at all. So the terracotta works very well with them. But, and I use the same kind of method. Sometimes I will just go in on top if I can see that it's going to take a long time for the water to absorb, because that, like, where they live, and also one's like a donkey tail. So yeah, I'll put in some footage of those whilst I'm talking about them. But yeah, those guys, they're right underneath a skylight. So they're getting, not only they're getting full light, they're also getting quite nice warm days. Even on a cloudy day, they're getting a chance to grow, which is fantastic. Throughout the winter, they're also getting a lot of light, but much lower temperatures. And I'm watering those in the winter. I'll probably do them every 2 months. And then throughout the summer, I'll do them every month. I am fertilizing. I am using fertilizer, but then sometimes I don't. And I don't really have like an off week or on week. It's just whatever's convenient for me. They seem fine with just plain water, and I do want to start actually using a fertilizer specifically for like succulents and cacti. Okay, so yeah, I just kind of wanted to go over the terracotta dudes. So there's 2 more plants that I want to talk about. One is in soil and in a no drainage pot, and the other one I've just recently taken out of the no drainage pot, and I put it into a drainage pot with same thing with soil. And these are my Rhipsalis. So I'm going to show you firstly the one that is now in a drainage pot, and it's in soil. Life has become a lot easier. So Rhipsalis, yeah, they look really pretty in no drainage pots. I do love the way that they look. I'll show you the other one. Actually, let me just go grab it. So this is my Hoya Paradoxa minor, and it's in a no drainage pot in a chunky aroid mix with a bit of desert mix in there. And then the one that I just showed you, this one is in a drainage pot, and this one is called Rhipsalis macratha, and it's also got an additional bit of the name that I still can't remember at the moment, but I'll write that up. So yeah, what I've realized with the no drainage situation is that with the plants that like you're probably going to be repotting every year, the no drainage works really, really well. I haven't had any complaints from this plant actually. I think it's because the vessel is quite large, it's got a lot of soil in there, and I don't know, it seems fine for now, but I do want to get this one into a drainage pot so that I can flush it through when I need to, because the root system on the Rhipsalis is tiny. It's tiny, and you know, they're not the fastest growers, so I think it's just more realistic that they go into pots with drainage, especially if you've not had much experience with Rhipsalis in particular. Hoyas, go for it guys. You don't need to have much experience as a plant grower to put Hoyas into no drainage with pon. Most definitely pon, I would say. But with the Rhipsalis, they are slightly more difficult to work out when they need watering. They don't really give you any signs like the other plants until it's too late. You know, Rhipsalis, they can be easy, but then they can also be really difficult. That's not really helping you guys very much, is it? But what I would say is, if you do plan on getting some Rhipsalis, maybe don't go down the route of no drainage straight away. But yeah, I mean, every now and then I do find a branch that looks like it's croaking it, and then I just chop it and I plonk it back in and it reroots, and that's been fine. It's most definitely started growing longer again. I did chop it in half and I put some more in the top because I wanted to get it bushier. So it's definitely growing. There are certain areas that tend to get a little bit drier than others. Oh, this is a brand new little shoot there. So cute. It's just like literally growing out. That's so nice. I like to see that. Yeah, so I'm very cautious with the watering with this plant being in a no drainage pot, because the moisture gets trapped inside there. So this one can hold out a lot longer than the others that are in drainage pots. So I'm watering the Rhipsalis, I would say every 10 days, every 2 weeks. Let's say every 2 weeks. I think that's probably more realistic. They're in drainage pots. I do them every 2 weeks, and I'll flush them through maybe every 3 months. I'll give them a good flush through with some plain old water. And because they're in soil, I'm not really that bothered whether I'm using plain water or fertilised water. It's like, I'll just do what I'm doing with the others. This guy, I'm pretty much using plain water, and every now and then I'll use the fertilised water. I try not to go too over the top with fertilised water with this one. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say about some plants that I probably, as a beginner or with a plant that I don't have much experience with, that I've not had for a long time, I probably wouldn't go down this particular route. I think I've just been very lucky with this plant, because I just plugged it into a no drainage pot as soon as I bought it. I was just like, yep, it looks pretty in there, cute, we like it, and it's just been really, really happy. And I've just been, I think it's been a bit of a stroke of luck, but yeah, it seems happy for now. But I do feel that eventually when I find the right pot for it, because I want it to go into a self-watering pot or something, I haven't quite worked out what kind of pot it's going to go into. It's going to have drainage, most definitely. It needs to be in a pot that I can flush it through, but I haven't quite found that pot yet. So until I find the pot, it's staying like this. But oh my gosh, she's one of my favorites. Yeah, I really love this plant, and I can see lots of new shoots. Oh my goodness. Anyway, I need to stop talking. The day is disappearing and I keep seeing my phone flash up because my daughter wants to have a Sunday chat. So I'm going to go. Thank you so much for hanging out. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope that it kind of clarified some of the questions that you may have had or that you have actually asked me about, and that maybe you felt that I hadn't covered it enough. If there are any additional questions, do leave those in the comments down below. Let me know what your experience has been. Let me know what you think of no drainage pots, and whether you have tried no drainage or whether you feel no drainage isn't a good move. I know that a lot of people do not like no drainage. Before I go, I showed you my 2 crystallinums, right? So one is in, I might have to just put up some B-roll of the other one. So this one here behind me is in a drainage pot. And yes, she's got 4 leaves. I bought both the plants at the same time. Has she got 4 leaves? Yeah, she's got 4 leaves. I bought the 2 plants at the same time. They were the same kind of size. And the other one, which I'll put on the side, is in a no drainage pot and has, I think, 5 leaves. There's no difference. In fact, I would say the other plant looks a little healthier and a little happier. But, you know, time will tell. This one was originally in a no drainage pot, so maybe it's just readapting. I will most definitely keep you some updates on whether there is a difference with drainage or no drainage. But in my mind, no drainage is like a self-watering pot, and obviously if you have plants that are super drought tolerant, that literally only need watering every month, like you wouldn't put a cactus, I wouldn't put a cactus in a no drainage pot. Or maybe I will, I don't know. I just wouldn't allow any water to go into the reservoir, and that's probably like the only difference. But I did want to point that out. I'll let you guys go. Thanks so much for hanging out. Please do give me a thumbs up, just so that we can lift these thumbs up numbers. I want them higher. I need them to be higher so that these videos get pushed out further into the algorithm. So, and if you haven't hit the subscribe button, go ahead and do that, because you've definitely watched this video until this point, which tells me you did enjoy the video. I doubt very much that you would have waited until this stage and then been like, oh, I hated her. If you enjoyed the video, please do hit the subscribe button and have a fabulous week. I will see you here again very soon. I am still doing that course. All that, yeah, it was a 7-day course, but obviously we got the weekend, so then we've got 2 more days. And then I have an exam on the Wednesday. So by Wednesday, I would have completed that course, but then of course I'm starting another course after that. I think that starts somewhere in June. So I'll have a couple of days without actually having to leave the house. I think the next course I do actually is online. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking. Thanks for bearing with me. I'm so sorry I wasn't around last week on Thursday, but I'm hoping to make that up to you. I'm always here on a Sunday though, right? So I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you here very, very soon. Have a fabulous week. All right, bye.